Hello, and welcome to another Dragon Plus live stream. I am your humble host, as always, Bart Carroll, and with me again is Mr. Jeremy Crawford.
Hello.
Lead rules designer of Dungeons & Dragons, lead designer of the Player's Handbook, and the game's managing editor. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm always glad to be here.
Yes, we had quite a few travels and conventions and things ongoing, which we'll get into. Really quickly, it was brought up in Twitter beforehand, and a good call out, happy belated Veterans Day to all of our veterans and service men and women out there. Thank you for everything that you do. And thank you to our first responders as well. These days, everyone in the California area, please be careful and take care of yourselves. That said, you had some travel in a different direction. You were in Madison, Wisconsin recently.
Yeah.
At Gamehole Con. How was that experience?
It was great. It went by in a snap. I DM'd some Dungeons & Dragons, which of course I always love.
Yes.
We had a D&D panel there. There was also a chance to meet many fans, talk about what they love about D&D. So I always enjoy that. And then I'll be leaving again week after next to go to PAX Unplugged. So that in the last 6 weeks, I will have gone to 3 conventions.
It's been that kind of fall.
Yeah.
As Satine Phoenix, the same thing. It was TwitchCon. It was coming out here for Extra Life. It was going off to Gamehole Con. And PAX Unplugged. Never. But it's great stuff. So
yeah, and so everyone, if you're going to be at PAX Unplugged, keep your eye out for me there. I'll be delivering the keynote address for the convention.
Congratulations!
Thanks. I'll also be doing some DMing. I'll also be on a panel or two. So there will be many chances to see me. And if you see me wandering around, even if I look distracted or my mind is off in some ethereal realm, don't hesitate to stop me, because I always love talking to you. I'm always happy to sign books. You're even welcome to bring your rules questions to me wherever I am, but just be warned that if the question gets super detailed, I will almost always ask you to produce your player's handbook or whatever book it is we're talking about so that we can look at the text together.
I could see that as a game show, like race to find the answer. Like if somebody throws out a Sage Advice question, and you have a panel of judges. Who can find it first in the book?
Yeah.
Which is the topic of today's show. We will be getting into more of your rules questions. We have a big list from the last couple of episodes. If you do have a question for this episode, please do put it in chat. Please preface it with the word question in all caps. And one of our fantastic moderators, I see Obo Crazy right now, already gathering them up. So thank you.
And Obo Crazy, I see rightly pointing out that if you do spring out from behind the corner to ask me a rules question at a convention, and I say, well, please produce the book, if you are on D&D Beyond and you have your iPhone or Android phone in your pocket, it turns out you have the book in your pocket. So my request for the book to manifest is pretty easy to fulfill.
So before we get into your questions, I did also want to give a quick shout out to the Extra Life activities and to all of the donors and participants and viewers, such as yourselves. We had our best year ever last year, and this year we beat it handily. We're already at over 195,000 in total donations, and there's still more coming in. So again, I've said it before, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for everyone who is participating in any capacity, who is donating any amount, or just viewing or spreading the word. All of the money raised goes towards a tremendous cause with the Children's Miracle Network Hospital. So thank everyone so much.
And thank you for all the hard work you did. Because everyone, you might not know how much behind the scenes work Bart does, not only for events like Extra Life, but also for things like the Stream of Many Eyes and our D&D website and these shows. So Bart and Pelham, who is off screen but ever present, especially when he tortures me with Philip the Hallway. These guys are sort of unsung heroes often when it comes to these events.
I appreciate it. It's one of those, I could get into it for a while, but of all the activities that we do throughout the year, the Extra Life one means a great deal to me. So it's nice to donate added time. Any added time is always not time poorly spent in any way.
Tell him. I just saw that.
There he is.
There was Philip the hallway.
Including, we ourselves have been working on a bit of the D&D Extra Life adventure. We've been working on the powered armor. I've been thanking various folks. There was a lot of help from a lot of various corners putting together the Lost Laboratory of Qualish. That was exciting for me. It was a project I was spearheading, but getting other designers involved, including Lawrence Withy, who I'll be maybe speaking about a little later on. But many other designers, artists from various corners. So we had a variety of styles. We had Claudio come on last week to talk about the cartography. We had Jason Thompson doing the art. Chris Perkins ran a bit of the adventure itself at Gamehole Con. It went wildly off the tracks in a delightful way as donations steered things in different directions.
Plus, Chris cannot. If you hand Chris a printed adventure, it is just like impossible for him to run it as written. And I say this as a person for whom that's also true, because if I had been there running it, it's like I just cannot resist tinkering with it and allowing the players' harebrained schemes to just shoot the adventure in all sorts of different directions.
And yes, and that's, I think, part of the fun of adventure writing is just making sure, and this was one of my lessons, was just making sure it's really open-ended for player options and DM options and steering it in wild. So it is available on the DM's Guild now. It's available for pre-order on D&D Beyond. So yes. We've got a question come in already from Stoned Wookie. Unearthed Arcana usually posted on the second Monday of the month. That would be today or yesterday, I believe.
That was yesterday. Today, in fact, is Tuesday.
Yes, today is Tuesday. Will we have an Unearthed Arcana today? Yes. Will we have an Unearthed Arcana yesterday?
Will we? Oh my goodness! We are traveling backward and forward through the time stream. Somebody
cast Meantime.
So, I have at this very moment traveled back in time.
Do we not have it up there on the front page?
Maybe. Oh, because here's the thing. Unearthed Arcana was posted yesterday. But I'm glad you all asked, because as we just went to look, it is possible it's not on.
Might not be on the front page.
But it is on the website.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah, it was posted yesterday.
If you go into articles in Unearthed Arcana, you should find it right there. But I'm going to stick it to the front page right now.
And again, you're seeing right here live what I was saying, that Bart does a lot of magic behind the scenes right here on Dragon Plus. He just moved the article to the front page.
Give us about 15 minutes for the cache to clear. That's always the caveat as well.
Yeah, so. But you can see the article if you, as Bart said, if you go into the article section on the D&D website. And last month there was also an Unearthed Arcana.
I'm going into an unlogged in version so I can make sure that it is actually alive.
Awesome, awesome. So yes. Unearthed Arcana, it was last month. It is this month. If ever we're not going to post one on a particular second Monday of the month, and for those of you who don't know, the release date that we aim for Unearthed Arcana is the second Monday of each month. If we're not going to post one, we will let you know. You don't have to wonder. We sometimes get asked, I'll predict maybe a question we might get later in the show. We sometimes get asked sort of late morning, midday on the second Monday, especially by those of you who might be on the East Coast or in Europe. Is it coming? Is it coming? Our target is no more specific for release than the second Monday. So sometimes that means first thing in the morning. Sometimes that means later in the day. Unearthed Arcana is a chance for us to test things that we're working on. And sometimes I decide at the last minute for us to post something else or for us to make some changes so that the version you see will be the most helpful when it comes to the kind of feedback we then get from you to then help steer where we go with that content, if we go anywhere with it, because sometimes the feedback will tell us, well, we really shouldn't go any further with this. So keep an eye out, second Mondays. It can be any time during the day or even early in the evening if our day is very full. And we always love it when then later in the month you fill out the surveys and let us know what you think about that month's Unearthed Arcana.
So, yes, I was going to make a joke about shipping my pants, but it is on the, on the website. Remember that old ad campaign?
No, I don't.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was for Target or something.
Yeah.
And it was like free shipping, and so it was like, I shipped my pants.
Wow.
Good stuff, good stuff. And there was an older couple, and I shipped my drawers. So, yeah,
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Highbrow. Yeah, highbrow. But
We are going for the gold here on Dragon Plus.
it's been a long couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm actually
Yeah.
exhausted here. But because the topic of Unearthed Arcana was of ships and the sea, so it was pretty cool. Oddly enough, this is, again, this Dragon Plus live stream. We're going to be doing a bit of features on ships in the next issue. WizKids has their, I don't know if miniature even counts for it, but they have their giant sailing ship that we'll be covering in depth, which comes from a Chris Perkins design when he was 19 for the Falling Star. So. Unearthed Arcana could not have been more timely for ships and the sea. So,
And for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at this month's Unearthed Arcana, it provides sample stat blocks for different types of ships. It also gives you information on having different characters be different officers on a ship, details different activities those officers can take over the course of a long ocean voyage. It also gives some details about hazards at sea, and also gives a downtime activity for being the owner of a ship, and it includes the expenses that requires, and also includes potential complications of owning a ship.
yeah, I've been looking through it. This is definitely a meaty Unearthed Arcana, as you would say sometimes, juicy.
I hope people reading it find it juicy.
I took one exception because I believe you talk about there's ability scores for ships, strength and dexterity, but a ship has a 0 in intelligence, wisdom, charisma. I would contend that many ships actually have a charisma.
Well, you'll notice here in the rule it says ships usually have a score of 0.
Ah, well played.
Yes. I made sure that
Managing editor.
Yes. So I made sure that word usually was there because, of course, Dungeons and Dragons being a game of high fantasy, it's possible you might board perhaps an elven ship that has been imbued with an ancient fey spirit, and that ship might sing you lullabies as you sail under the moonlight.
Oh, I just mean some ships, they've got a beauty to them, a charisma, if you will. I don't know. I was told the 2 happiest days in your life, my father-in-law, was one when you buy a boat and then when you sell your boat. It's a pain in the ass.
It's funny because I have seen that be the case for several people, where they dream of having a boat and then they dream of not having a boat.
So yes, to answer your question, there is an Unearthed Arcana. It is available now. Please do take a look at it. Please do fill out the survey when that becomes available. Always interested in your thoughts and impressions of the material. So, why don't we dive into some questions here?
Q&A time.
This one was an older one. I love it so much though. Timber Reader asks, the Warlock has a very nuanced relationship with their patron. Their powers are said to be a tap that once opened cannot be turned off, but their higher level mechanics imply an ongoing relationship in the form of mystic arcanum and their capstone. So, and here's the question, and I love the story potential for this. How involved should a patron be? And what can either party do without consent of the other? Can players in conflict with their patron continue being a warlock if their patron dies or is removed in some way? I love the idea of you're a warlock and your patron is just gone from the multiverse. Like, what happens?
So the short answer is it's up to the DM. Because the rules basically make it clear that once you form this bond with your patron, your magic has been unlocked. And let's say in the grand story of a campaign, let's say for the sake of argument, your patron was destroyed.
Yes.
And then a person might say, oh no, but I now got my mystic arcanum, and the class feature says it's bestowed upon me by my patron.
Right.
What happens? My patron no longer exists.
Yeah.
Well, your patron is an otherworldly entity for whom time might be a little timey-wimey. It's possible that that bestowal took place in the original gift of power, and you are only now unlocking that potential within yourself. So there really needn't be any impediment to your power if your patron in the story of the world is destroyed, because you can again imagine that all of that magic is invested in you, and then you spend your career unlocking it. Now that said, if a DM wants to explore an actual role-played out relationship with the patron, that's an awesome thing to do, and I know that many campaigns have done just that. A similar thing could be explored with clerics and their gods. You could have maybe some cosmic struggle where a cleric's deity is imprisoned or maybe even destroyed, and then a person might say, well, but how does the cleric get their spells? Well, one way you can explain it is that the god's power, even if the god was destroyed, diffused into the multiverse, and the cleric is still tapping into that energy, and then probably doing so with great melancholy as they remember the god who no longer is, or perhaps the god who is lost, and then that could then set up a wonderful story where you go searching for your god who might have been bound deep within Carcery, or somewhere else in the Outer Planes, or perhaps plunged somewhere into a dark prison in the Shadowfell.
It makes me think of Ioun. Maybe they're gone, but all that remains is the stones in their name.
Right, and perhaps you could have an entire campaign where the story could be about the discovery that the god Ioun exists in all of the Ioun stones. And each Ioun stone is actually a fragment of that god. And maybe if all of the stones were reunited, that god would be reborn.
In a gauntlet.
Oh boy, here we go again. Now, I will say, if you have that gauntlet that can end or begin life at will,
yes,
and can alter the timeline,
yes,
there are far better ways to alleviate suffering in the cosmos than killing half of the cosmos.
I do have a Nerf version of that. I have to bring in that gauntlet. We were mentioning this, and I don't mean to make it offhanded, but I also don't want to not mention it either, as we recently lost sort of a creative influence upon the world recently with Stan Lee's passing. So we did just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And I think I know the answer to the question, but I was going to ask your favorite Stan Lee creation or character.
Yeah, you know the answer. So I love many of the characters and stories that Stan Lee created, but my absolute favorite is Doctor Strange, who was, not actually something I came to later on. Doctor Strange was actually my first favorite superhero. It's an odd one for, I was a little kid, and it was just because I happened to find in the used bookstore in my hometown of San Luis Obispo in California some used Doctor Strange comics, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's stories about a wizard fighting gods. And so I've been a Doctor Strange fan ever since. And many people don't know that Doctor Strange is one of the characters that Stan Lee created himself, working in that case with Steve Ditko. and you know, and in with all of his characters, I was usually working with the original artist to give that character its initial life. But I love so many of the others. I mean, he's most often associated with Spider-Man, and I think Spidey alone is a wonderful character for Stan Lee to be remembered for, because in not only our world, but even in comic book storytelling, you so often get these characters who are grim, cynical, ultra-violent. And for me, Spider-Man has always been a wonderful example that you can marry heroism and strength to kindness, good humor, tenderness. Spider-Man actually, he tells the loved ones in his life that he loves them. I mean, he smiles. He tries to preserve life. I've so often thought that Spider-Man is such a wonderful example of what a superhero can be.
And I liked him as well for one of the reasons being, he's a kid, and in his stories he has relatable problems.
Yes.
As a kid. He has to get to class. He has to get to his after-school job. He's not Tony Stark with all the resources in the world, or Reed Richards, but he's a young man with a superpower.
Yep.
So yeah, he was pretty special. So.
And in the old days, here I'm really displaying my comic book geek card. In the old days, it was not super unusual for Spider-Man to occasionally pay Doctor Strange visits for advice, because they were both in Manhattan. And because of that, in the old comics, when I was recently playing the new Spider-Man game on the PlayStation, there's actually a point where you can find Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum. And I suddenly got excited, like, oh my gosh, is Stephen Strange going to make a cameo in this game? Not yet, but at least his house is there. So there is the tip of the hat in the game to the connection between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man.
Well, so the Warlock question clearly brought that to mind, but we do have a couple of other many questions coming in. Questions from the last one. This one I liked just because I was curious about the answer myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Mossy Dragon had asked some time ago, some archdevils now have stats from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Will we get stats for powerful good creatures like the Archfey?
Absolutely. You can even see an example of that in our most recent release, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, where we have stats for named very powerful angel, very powerful sphinx. These mighty creatures will continue to appear in our books when it makes story sense. And being a person who loves not only including Fey material in our official books, but also in my home campaign, I would also very much like to see the Archfey make an appearance at a point that makes sense, given whatever book it is that we're working on.
Bit of a rules question, because I believe one gamer is having a fight with his brother and needs to know the answer to this. If a Lightfoot halfling rogue is taking cover behind a party member and shoots at a target, does the target gain half cover? Because you're hiding, because you yourself are hiding behind somebody else.
All right, now
this is clearly a very specific
So
in-game question.
I'm looking at my laptop screen, because for today, rather than bringing the stack of books I normally bring in, I brought my laptop and I have D&D Beyond on it. So beware. You started the question with something that will now require me to say something before I answer the rules question. Because you prefaced it with, he's having a fight with somebody. And so forgive me, but I have to now remind everyone this is a game. And I hope what you're referring to is just a friendly argument.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
No, that was me editorial.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes people will come to me and they'll communicate that actually they're having some kind of conflict within their group about rules.
Yes.
And that's often a little heartbreaking to me because D&D is a co-op game. It's a game where we get together with friends and we tell stories together. The rules are there in service to that camaraderie, that friendship, that storytelling. And so please never let the rules drive a wedge between you and your friends and your family members. Remember, your keyboard, I saw keyboard here on the screen and said that instead of what was in my head. The stories you're telling together, your friendships, those are way more important than who's correct about the rules, particularly because so often your group will decide to run things however you want anyway. Often people will forget rules, so it's also difficult for anyone to be correct 100% of the time. What's way more important than being correct is that you're happy, your friendships are solid, and you're having a good time. Okay, I'll take Dad Jeremy's hat off, and I'll go back to being a game designer. So let's look at the rules on half cover. And on cover overall. What we have in our cover rules, and this is in Chapter 9 of the Player's Handbook, you'll see that a target can benefit from cover only when an attack or other effect originates on the opposite side of the cover. And so when it comes to half cover, a target has half cover if an obstacle blocks at least half of its body. The obstacle might be a low wall, a large piece of furniture, etc. And it can also be a creature, whether it's your enemy or a friend. So really the question then becomes, is your target actually obscured in some way by the obstacle? So what I as DM would want to know is if, let's say, the halfling is like firing their crossbow between the legs of their tall Goliath buddy, and it is otherwise completely clear between the Goliath and the halfling's target, I as a DM would rule, well, the target doesn't really have cover because the Goliath is in no way obstructing your target. So that really, to me, is the key, is thinking about the environment. How does the positioning of your character and the environment and your target, how do all of those pieces relate with each other? Mm-hmm. And this is a great example of how many things in D&D are meant to be situational. Many things in D&D are meant to be adjudicated by the DM, taking into account all of these different pieces. You know, where in space are the player characters? Where in space are the monsters? Where in space are the pieces of furniture if you're in a room, or the trees if you're in a forest? And then make appropriate rules calls based on all of those factors.
All right. Well, there you go. So hopefully that settles a friendly chat. And yes, that was that was me editorializing. So,
so really, me being Dad Jeremy was directed entirely at you.
It was, yes, it was. I'm pulling one more. I maybe should have asked these because they were in a theme, but I like this for two reasons, and I'll explain in a minute. Bomber asks, going back to warlocks and patrons for a moment, is a warlock dragon patron ever been considered, or in the work pipes? And I like the idea of a dragon patron and work pipes.
I'm imagining the poor dragon patron, us trying to squeeze it through various pipes. I'm imagining, like in the old movie Brazil,
yes,
with all the strange ducts.
The bank pneumatic tubes that you've got.
So, yes, we have indeed discussed such a patron.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, we did way back when working on the Player's Handbook. The main reason why we didn't explore it in the PH is that we wanted the dragon theme to at least initially belong to the sorcerer when it comes to the different classes. But us exploring that in the future is not out of the question.
All right, let's pull one from live chat here. Let's see. We've got questions about scribing scrolls. We've got questions about gods existing in multiple settings.
Ooh, let's do that one. I love that stuff.
Projectralis asks, if a god exists in multiple settings and is killed in one of those settings, does it die in all settings or just that one setting?
So
that's a weighty philosophical quandary here.
It is an issue that has come up in D&D's history because various gods have been destroyed, but then almost always they are reborn in some way. And also it has been true going all the way back to first edition D&D that some deities manifest in multiple D&D worlds. Like there are some gods that you can find who are not only in the Forgotten Realms, but also in a world such as Greyhawk. There are these connections that snake through the cosmos, connecting one world to another. Most often, when you encounter a deity in D&D, you are not encountering the deity's true form. The deity's true form most often is in some ways unmeetable in a physical sense. You might be able to, through some sort of mystical experience, apprehend some aspect of the god's true form. But most often when you think you're meeting a god, you're meeting that god's avatar, or some temporary manifestation of that god's divinity. To destroy a god truly and forever is nearly impossible because, I mean, again, we've demonstrated that throughout the game's history, where even gods that, say, have died in the Forgotten Realms later have shown back up. And gods are very difficult to keep down.
Which is one of the maybe apocryphal stories I heard about the old deities and demigods. Is once they were statted out, the difficulty being the characters wanted to go and hunt down these divine beings.
Well, because
take their stuff.
Which was a natural inclination in people because that book was presented like it was a monster manual.
Right. Yes. Similar format. Just hey, these are higher level monsters in a way.
So to go back to the original question, you can imagine that, let's say a deity was slain or diminished in some way in a world like the Forgotten Realms. And let's say another world has that same god. As a storyteller, what I might do is the worshippers of that god in the other world might notice almost like there's a tremor in reality. Something is wrong, but the god's presence would continue in the world where the god has not been slain, but the god would just sort of, in terms of the multiverse overall, have some diminishment that has occurred. But I would not say that God's presence being eliminated in one world would eliminate that god in another. Partly because in D&D, what gives gods some of their power and what often anchors them in a particular world is actually their worship on that world. And so as long as there are enough faithful for that deity in a particular world, then that deity vanishing on another world would not wipe it out.
So related question, Random Ricker asks, since we're talking about gods in multiple planes, can a cleric's god be reached from a plane where he, she, they is not worshipped or known?
Yes, because again, God's power, and the magic that the gods themselves draw on is a part of the magical weave that permeates the entire multiverse. So you can imagine it's almost like a divine internet. Like the connection might be a little slow because it's you're in the realms and you're trying to draw on power that's bestowed upon you by, say, Paladine on Kryn. It might be like a dial-up connection where, it's like, are you there, God? It's me or cleric. And you might feel like there's silence, but eventually, the message and the magic will get through.
It's like trying to FaceTime my parents. It's the connections on your end, guys. I know we're good here. All right. So here's. I think I'm trying not to pick questions, just the ones that delight me, but this one delights me as well. Malamber01 asks, any possibility of spells to create combat clones, a la Naruto? I'm not familiar with that anime myself, but I believe that's where it's from. But a combat clone spell.
No immediate plans that I can talk about.
Are there plans now to make a combat?
But we certainly have a number of spells in the player's handbook that allow you to, manipulate your body, to summon up other creatures, to even create things like Big B's Hand, all of which could be reskinned as, describing it as some kind of extension of your own body or as some kind of clone that you've produced. I am, as I tweeted out, I think yesterday, I am a huge fan of people reskinning things in D&D. There's nothing in the rules that says, every fireball must look exactly alike, every Big B's Hand must look the same. I encourage my players to reskin things to their heart's content. Not just magic, but also, please customize what your weapons look like, what your armor looks like, what it looks like when you use your maneuvers if you're a battle master. All of that really is in the domain of the player to describe. I think DMs most of the time are delighted by that because it adds a special texture to the world. It helps the character stand out. Just like this past weekend when I was DMing at Gamehole, in more than one of my games, I had clerics, for instance, cast Spirit Guardians. And each time a cleric would cast that spell, I would always ask, well, what do your spirits look like? And then once I knew, then that's a chance to add great flavor to a scene. Because then suddenly as a DM, you can describe, well, what are those particular spirits doing as they slow foes down, as they deal damage? There's a ton of storytelling potential in the basic rules of the game without needing extra rules to do it. Because I think sometimes people think they need permission to, can I change the color of my fireball? Can it be purple? And the answer is yes. Nothing in the function of fireball demands that it look like bog standard fire.
Hey, green flame.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something I do a ton as a DM. I will often describe monsters having very unusual looking weapons. I will describe spells that a spellcasting monster casts in a way appropriate to that monster, trying to use the game elements themselves as a way for me to deliver story. Because I often like to encourage people, keep the story going even during combat, because it's really easy to let your descriptions, your narrative to kind of clatter to the side in combat, and it really just sort of turn into a cycle of I hit, I miss, I do X damage. I love as a DM to have the story going as strongly in the combat as out of the combat, by having the NPCs say things, by me describing the environment, by describing how the environment is changing because of what's going on in the fight, by describing, again, the magic and the equipment in a way that maybe the players haven't seen before. And even those descriptions can end up being seeds for further adventure. Sometimes I will just drop a little detail you get stabbed by one guy and you notice his weapon on the blade has a snake etched into it. The other one has a skull etched into it. Another one has a Dracula etched into it. What does this mean? And so then suddenly this engagement goes from just being the whittling down of hit point pools and turns into just yet another opportunity for your story to move forward.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. It's always nice to have a surplus of details, and the players will be interested in some and not in others, and you're not always sure which is latched onto, which ones, but then hey, there's more opportunity for you as the dungeon master to take things in a direction that your players are interested in as well. So let's grab another question here. Let's see. We've got another one on warlocks and the mystic arcanum not being able to cast on higher levels.
Oh, let's ask that.
Okay. That's quite the username. Jack to Zoljali Lionel asks, what was the intent on making Warlock's Mystic Arcanum not able to be cast on higher levels?
All right, I'm calling up the text so that I make sure I'm referring to the Mystic Arcanum that you all are seeing and not some version that's rattling in my head from the past.
While you're looking that up, I like this new camera setup because it's either both of us or it cuts to you. And so when it cuts to you, I can quietly just start scratching my face and doing the other things off camera that I'm desperate to do.
Oh, right. All right, so the Mystic Arcanum is really meant in some ways to feel almost like it's a bit like a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and many of the Warlock's abilities are like that. These strange mystical things that the Warlock can do without relying on something like spell slots. We did this, and we did this. The camera's now on you, sir. Pelham is an imp.
You'll see what I'm really doing off camera,
Yes.
just drinking my can of water and quietly burping to myself.
Yes, people only think it's water. The idea is that the Mystic Arcanum, again, is sort of this almost like a dark superpower, doesn't rely on spell slots, and it indeed is meant to exist entirely outside of the spell slot economy. Mm-hmm. One of the consequences, the questioner is right, is that you can't increase its level by using a higher level slot. That is intentional. The Warlock is meant to function in unusual ways. It is not meant to just simply mimic how, say, a wizard works or a sorcerer. So that is one of the things for a person to consider when you're looking at different spellcasting classes. Is not only does it have the storytelling feel that you're going for, but do you also groove on how that class's magic works? And yeah, warlocks have these spells in their back pocket. That they get to rely on, again, without slots. Now, and part of that is also because Warlocks don't have many slots. And so we wanted to make sure they had these high-level things that they could rely on even when they have no spell slots. And so that's also one of the advantages they have, is they have these saucy abilities that they can unleash when maybe someone else is tapped out with spell slots.
I will say now, Warlock, my favorite class to play.
Nice.
I love it for the patron as the story idea. I love the different angles it takes. It's a great class. We are getting close to the last quarter of the live stream, so before I forget, and not to make Pelham's life too difficult, but I did say that we would do a raffle for this live stream as a thank you to everyone taking an hour out of your day to view us live. It's much appreciated. So I'm very proud of it. I hope you enjoy it. So what we wanted to do is raffle off a copy of The Lost Laboratory of Qualish. Again, we don't want to shortchange Extra Life, of course. So whoever wins the raffle, I will buy you a copy. I will buy you a copy from the DMs Guild, and I will send it your way. So I believe the raffle is open now. And again, thank you to everyone who had a hand in that adventure. We're going to talk through a little bit more of that in particular in the next Dragon Plus issue as well. We've got lots to say about all that went into it and everyone who was involved. It was definitely a large group effort. So yes, I'll be delighted to send one out. Let's grab a couple more questions here. We've got spell questions. We've got necromancy. We've got a few that came up on Magic the Gathering as well.
Yeah. Let's do that one.
All right.
Since Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica just came out.
It did. Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica explores a bit more of the Magic and Dungeons and Dragons intersections we've been using in the Plane Shift articles. It's a great book, fantastic book. AJ Pickett asks, is Magic the Gathering part of the D&D Planescape multiverse now?
So the short answer is no. The long answer is the multiverses, you can almost imagine them being next door neighbors. And that there are mysterious ways to hop from one to the other.
If I may, like a Marvel DC occasional crossover.
Yes.
Although they have their own little multiverses.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, back in the day, Marvel and DC did a number of crossovers where superheroes from their respective universes would meet up and clobber different foes together. So you can again imagine the Magic multiverse and the D&D multiverse being neighbors, and Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica is sort of one of the first, is the first official example of the two universes connecting. We actually, a little behind the scenes bit here, we actually had more about that originally in our draft of Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. We had a whole section on Ravnica's relationship to the D&D multiverse. We ended up cutting it in the end because we felt in some ways it was posing more questions than it was answering, and sort of better for us to address in a forum like this where we can have a conversation about it than planting a flag in a book and saying, that this is how the two are related. Suffice to say, if you have Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, I would recommend to DMs when it comes to interworld travel, I would just treat it like the way you would treat a world in the D&D multiverse in terms of how to get there. I am imagining there are doors in Sigil that will lead to Ravnica, and doors in Ravnica that lead back, particularly given the number of celestials and fiends that are in Ravnica. That shows you that world has a connection not only to the other magic worlds in the magic multiverse, but also has a connection to various spiritual realms. And in D&D, the worlds are most often connected through such spiritual realms.
Stands to reason that, Sigil might have certain connections there. I did see a question, sort of a related question. One, Mr. Ghost asks, any plans to visit other magic planes and future official material?
We'll see. We'll see how the Ravnica book goes. The magic worlds are certainly wonderfully rich, and it's kind of a treasure trove when you look at here at Wizards of the Coast. When we look at the worlds we have in Magic and the worlds we have in D&D, we have so many wonderful places to travel to, including, just this year, we also traveled to Eberron in the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, and I am a big fan of those excursions, wandering out into the multiverse and seeing the different shape that D&D can take in different worlds.
No, I agree. That's working at this company. There's Magic and D&D, and seeing how one can be expressed in the other is always a joy in a way to be able to explore those worlds as well. Let's ask a few more questions before we run out of time. Hentamashi asks, in regards to necromancy, is all death-related wizardry considered evil for the purposes of alignment?
So there is a brief note about this in the spellcasting chapter of the Player's Handbook, that necromancy, particularly necromancy that specifically raises up the undead, is viewed by most people to be a form of, if not moral evil, then at least existential evil. Now, even that, when it comes to the raising of undead, there's even a question mark over that sometimes in the D&D multiverse, because we have worlds like Eberron, where there are elves who have undead among them that are not like vampires or liches or zombies or skeletons. So even that can be a little gray morally. So that's ultimately, I would say, when it comes to alignment, it is at the very least morally gray, most of the time tending toward morally evil, mostly because a lot of the magic that involves undeath really involves cursing a person to a horrible afterlife. Because if the person has not chosen their lot, I'm thinking here of like liches, where a person has decided they want to be undead. Often a creature that is, let's say, slain and turned into a specter or a shadow or a zombie, they often didn't get a choice, and then often their soul is then trapped, and often then trapped in a form that cannot be raised by most standard resurrection magic. I mean, you have to usually get all the way up to something like true resurrection to sort of fish the person out of that horrible limbo that they've been cast into as an undead creature. So it depends on context, but most of the time it is a dark force. Now, when it comes to necromancy magic that does not pertain to undeath, because there are plenty of necromancy spells that do not involve the creation of the undead, I think many of those are morally and existentially neutral, because many of them are simply tapping into the force of death that is a natural part of the multiverse. And one of the reasons why so many cultures and groups in the D&D multiverse specifically hate undeath is that undeath disrupts the natural cycle. Because everyone expects that in nature, things will be born and then they will eventually die.
Right.
But that cycle, that then also in many worlds in D&D can include rebirth, that cycle is broken by what is usually a curse of undeath.
It was making me think a great potential story hook is that unwilling lich, where like, please find my phylactery.
Right.
Get me out of this.
I'm over it.
I didn't make me this way. Please,
yes.
somebody else did it.
Yeah, someone hid my phylactery. Get me out.
We're getting close to the top of the hour. So we'll wrap up here pretty quickly. Again, we'll close the raffle up. Final entries. We're giving away a copy of Lost Laboratory of Qualish, the D&D Extra Life adventure we put together for this year. It is available now for everyone. We set the price at $9.99 on the DM's Guild. We tried to pack it with as much material as we could to make it a good value for your donation dollars. It's 61 pages and includes all sorts of great things. So we'll close the raffle here in a minute and pick a winner. Before we sign off, we'll end on one last question. We'll try and find a quick one. But before we sign off again, thanks everyone for tuning in for an hour of your time. Thank you, as always, our followers, subscribers. Thank you to our moderators, doing a great job. Thank you to Mr. Crawford for donating your knowledge. I was also laughing, realizing I don't think I've asked one question where you've ever just been like, well, how the hell should I know? And thank you to Pelham running the board. So let's, we've got D&D news coming up in 2 minutes. Here's a quick one I think that we can get through. This one's more intro. An elf can rest for just 4 hours to rest. Would you say then they have an added 4 free hours each day for things such as crafting or other downtime activities? Do elves get more downtime?
I, as a DM, would definitely be open to exploring that with a player. I would say whatever activity that elf is engaged in those sort of extra 4 hours, I'd want it to be fairly chill. The elves are still, they still need time to take it easy each day. They don't need as much sleep.
They binge watch a lot more Haunting of Hill House than I can get through.
But yeah, I think it's not out of the question to explore elves in their sort of the extra 4 hours they have when everyone else is snoozing. I mean, heck, if I was an elf and could do that, I think I'd be using those 4 hours just to read more books. Because I never have enough time to read all the books I want to read.
See, I'd be a terrible elf because I'd use those extra 4 hours to nap, which would just negate it entirely.
So you would transfer 4 hours and then sleep for 4 hours.
Yeah, and it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We're here at 3 o'clock, so we're going to shift over in a minute to D&D News with Greg Tito. Stay tuned. We've got Dice Camera Action coming up 4 p.m. Pacific. Sirens of the Realms coming up at 7 p.m. Pacific. I saw a question come in from Elwarius as well about publishing a printed version of the DM Guild material. The Extra Life material. I believe the plan is down the road we'll be doing print on demand via the DM's Guild, so look for that as well. And hey, we're going to be hosting Elwarius' channel this Saturday evening, so please do tune in for that. So thanks again to everyone. Thank you, Jeremy. We'll see you in a couple of weeks after the Thanksgiving U.S. holidays here.
Yes, yeah, and I think our plan next time is to talk about among other things, the errata will be releasing this week for the core rulebooks.
Yes. So yeah, we'll do a deep dive into the errata. We'll give you a chance to take a look at that, and we'll talk through it next time.
And something else that I have not revealed until now is we also have this month a new version of the basic rules coming out. So you heard that first here, everyone. The basic rules, after 4 or 5 years, are finally going to make it to version 1.0.
And with that, we'll talk more next time. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.